We were waiting to see if there'd be a response.
Well,
really.
we were waiting to see what the response would be, and here it is. Moments ago, Donald Trump responded on his social media platform, writing in part, ready and willing to debate Biden at the two proposed times in June and September. I would strongly recommend more than two debates, and for excitement purposes, a very large venue. Although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds, not sure what that means. That's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when, I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble.
Oh, okay.
Writes the former president. So he says in this moment today, doesn't want to be seen probably as backing down, that he would agree to these two debates, perhaps with some negotiating, some sticking points in there.
Yeah, we have each man using catchphrases as part of their debate rhetoric this morning. But yes, Trump took to Truth Socials a few minutes ago, as you just read. He says he's in, but the devil's in the details here.
Yeah.
There's a lot that has to be worked out. Trump, of course, is going to need to say today that he's in. He doesn't want to project cowardly, that he's cowardly, Rev. But there's a lot. There's venue, moderator, whether or not they do make a choice about crowds. Trump wants it, Biden doesn't. The microphones are going to be a big issue. We highlighted that last hour. Will Trump will Trump agree to a system where he could be cut off at any time? So I don't think we should count on these debates happening, but a few weeks ago, I think you would have taken a bet, said there'd probably be no debates. At least today, there's a chance. What do you think?
I think there's a chance, but I think that Donald Trump will try to use every trick he can to avoid debating, particularly on a one-on-one without an audience, because he does not know policy. He does not know really what his presidency would mean in terms of a reelect. And he does not need to be one-on-one where he cannot feed off of making audiences clap or laugh. And as Joe said earlier, where he gives his lines that would fall flat if it's just in a studio with Joe Biden and a moderator. So he's not going to try in any way, shape, or form to cooperate with that kind of setup.
Because, as we know, Donald Trump needs a crowd. He's most comfortable at his rallies. It's kind of all he does, where he has a friendly audience that echoes and does the call and response, and he can say whatever comes to his mind. In a controlled setting where there's no crowd and a well-informed moderator with good questions, and it's about policy, and it's about answering questions about perhaps some of his trials that are sitting in front of him, that's not a good setup for Donald Trump. So he's saying, like John said, he has to say today, of course, anytime, any place, let's get ready to rumble. But we'll see when this negotiating starts.
And also, I mean, a court proceeding is a pretty serious proceeding, and he can't even go to that without bringing in little crowds here and there. And
he builds them at Mar-a-Lago. He comes out and addresses the dinner audience most nights. It's sort of a rally. And we should note, I'm told now there's yet to be any direct contact between the Trump and Biden campaigns. So
no, just
social media posts.
A truth post.
And let's not forget, we are waiting to see when he gets a verdict in Manhattan.
Right.
Because if the verdict doesn't come until June, if he's convicted, he will need the permission of his parole officer to travel to any debate.
Right, there's that. There's a long way to go. We have no idea how that's going to turn out, but that is the possible outcome there.
Never thought you'd say that, did you, Rev? A presidential candidate needs his parole officer. Let him go to a debate.
And have to get permission. You have to show proof that your parole officer approved you going to this city. I mean, if he's talking like he's one of the guys, if he gets convicted, he's in New York, a parole officer has to approve you leaving the state. You certainly can't leave the country. Let's be real here now. He is potentially a convicted felon.
Okay.
On TV studios in Manhattan. We'll do it here.
Yeah, it could just be around here. All right.